Hello to everyone, and welcome back to Multifamily Mastery Episode 2. This is a podcast where I take you on a journey into multifamily investing as a complete beginner and hopefully end up somewhere someday. I'm your host, Jonathan Zook, and once again, welcome. Alright, so this episode, I wanted to talk about Multifamily Live 2023. It was an event right at the beginning of June in Nashville, Tennessee. It was amazing for me. I had a great time. I met so many cool people. I learned so much that weekend. It was absolutely incredible. The main thing was just that me, a 17-year-old high school kid, could actually do this, which was really inspiring. Because before I'd been like, oh well, how am I supposed to get into this? You know, like how who's gonna respect me, like all that stuff. But the 7-figure community, absolutely amazing. Love them. Super supporting, especially because I'm so young. They're like, yeah, we want you to succeed. So that's great. Had a great time the whole week. Learned so much. So this episode, I want to do a summary of basically everything, or not everything, but kind of like the main points of everything I learned. I took, I'd say, pretty decent notes there, and I've got a list of stuff, so I'm going to just start going through that. So first person that I have, Jason Ursi. He spoke a lot, but I have the most for have the most notes from one of his first presentations. So the main takeaway from that was meet the need. Basically provide assistance for whatever people need, provide for the workforce, provide for the blue collar people, because they need affordable housing and they want a good community around them, and they also need good housing, but they can't pay so much for it because they're blue collar. Like you can only pay so much for that. So meet the need, provide for the workhouse, affordable but good housing. Take an existing property, make it better, basically. You want to create a community at your building. You don't want to just have just some random building where people live. You want to create a community around that A, draws people in, and B, keeps people staying there. And then later on, once you build that community, and you do select interior and exterior renovations, you can organically raise the rent. And the tenants hopefully won't have a problem with that because you've made it such a better place to live. And they really appreciate that. So they're like, okay, yeah, the rent raise, it's okay. Because a lot of times when a building comes under new management, the tenants are really scared that they're just going to raise rent no matter what. But if we can come in, make it a better place to live, then we can raise rent. And it's perfectly fine. The next main thing was asset management is not property management. Basically, property management is the day-to-day work, collecting rent, lawn care, general maintenance, all like the day-to-day stuff. And then asset management, that's running the building as a whole. You want to make it as efficient as possible to get as much money from it as possible. You want to make sure it runs right, make sure everything's efficient, cut off loose ends, add amenities, make the property, I already said that. And then after you make it a better place to live, that's when you raise the rent. So pretty cool, yeah. All right, the next person I have, Scotty Emsley. Didn't have much for him, but it's really important, and that is partners. Partners are an incredibly important part of multifamily. You can't. It's so hard to do this alone. Like single family, it tends to be more like one man versus the other, kind of like a little bit of competition in there. But multifamily, you have to bring a team together. You need someone to raise capital. You need someone who's the asset manager. You need other things. You can't. It's really hard to do that all. So partners are important, and look first for what you can give before what you can get from people, and then that just makes everything so much more enjoyable. All right, the next section of notes I have is Pili Yarusi's talk on raising capital. So the main takeaway from it is you need to educate your investors. A lot of them, they won't know really what the whole multifamily thing is. They won't know how safe it is. They won't know how good it is for the future. So you need to tell them. You need to be like, hey, this is a pretty safe investment. It's a hard asset. So things in the future, no matter what happens through all this whack stuff going on, no matter what happens there, it's a hard asset, so you're always going to have money coming in through that, as long as all the numbers are correct and all that stuff. So you need to educate your investors, and you provide an amazing investment opportunity for them. They're helping you, basically. And then you want to build your relationships, because relationships are partnerships no matter what. You never know like you never know what they do really until you start talking with them. So if you talk with them, you can gain so much more from all of that. Going further into that, you need to build your brand. You need social media, podcasting. That's why I'm doing this podcast. Actually, was because of this presentation. That's the only reason I'm doing this. I was like, who in the world needs to make a podcast as a 17-year-old kid that has no idea what they're doing yet? So that's why I started this. All right, next presentation I had was Chad King. So I really liked this. He actually, during one of his presentations, he called a broker on stage, which was really cool. It was cool to see it like in person and all that stuff. One of his first presentations I remember on it was about talking to brokers. Like, be comfortable, know what you're talking about before you get into it, but also don't feel like you need to over prepare for it, because a lot of times, as long as you come off sounding like you know what you're talking about, they'll respect that. They'll realize that and be like, hey, this person knows what he's talking about. I don't need to like build a bunch of walls, put a bunch of red flags up for this person because they don't know what they're talking about. So as long as you sound like you know what you're talking about, even if you kind of don't, that's me. You can still call them, you can still contact them. So I really appreciated that. One of the things I got was my price, your terms, or your price and my terms. Has to be one or the other. It can't be favoring one person, basically. Use creative financing. That was a little above my knowledge level, still is, so I'm not going to go into that super deep right now, but as I learn more about it, I totally will. You want to make it a home. You want, like Jason said earlier, you want to build a community around it. All right, the last two presentations I took notes on, they weren't super real estate focused, but they were mindset focused, which is, it's a really good foundation. It's equally as important because you need that before you can build and grow. First presentation was Nick Santanastasso. I completely apologize if I butchered that last name. I'm not completely sure on it. So he is one of 4 surviving people with this syndrome called Hanhart syndrome. He doesn't have any legs and he has one arm, and it was so incredible. The speech, it was amazing. He's a public speaker. He's a bodybuilder. I'll throw up a picture or two of him. He's really, really inspiring. He talked about mainly mindset is everything. If you have a weak mindset, there's no way that you can possibly grow yourself and grow your company. It doesn't work like that. So mindset is everything. What I focus on, I get more of. That's another main takeaway from that. If you focus on something and that's everything to you, like, you're going to, as long as you work towards that, you're going to make progress. That's how it is. Unless there's just absolutely crazy things that you can't control, you're going to make progress. And that's another thing that he talked about here. What you can't control, don't worry about it. There's no point worrying about things that you have no say in, that you can't change at all. But on the other hand, you want to control the things that you can control, and you want to make those, you want to set that up to where it benefits you the most. And the last thing he talked about, emotional integrity. You have to be real with yourself. He said to heal, you have to feel, and that it's understandable, because if you sugarcoat things or find fixes or whatever to get around tough times, to get around pain, then it's not going to work that way. To heal, you have to feel it. To get out of it, you can't just keep yourself there. You have to feel it, and you have to move on from it. And then you have to use that pain and hard times as leverage for the future. All right, the last person was Walter Bond. He was an NBA player overall. Now he's a motivational speaker, public speaker, all that good stuff. So, firstly, he said being busy is not being productive. There's a good difference. You can be incredibly busy, but honestly not get anything done. And it's all about figuring out what you need to do in life and what you need to do that actually is productive and isn't just busy work, basically. Another thing he said was that you don't grow in comfort. You can't be comfortable and content with everything and grow, because you're not going to have any drive. If you're fine with the way things are, good for you. But if you want to grow and get to that next level, you need to make yourself uncomfortable in certain ways. And that can be really tough to get started, but Trust me, it's worth it. He also said coaches are incredibly important. They're like an investment to you, because even if it may seem like so much up front, it's going to do an insane amount to help you in the future. I got a quote here: I add value to you, you add value to me. One man like iron sharpens another man. All right, the main takeaways from the entire weekend. For me personally, I know that it's possible now, which really inspired me, because I was like, hey, I can actually do this. I can work towards this. Speaking of working, you want to have a plan and a goal. I have some goals set up right here under one of my monitors. And it's great because I look at them hours every day. Like, I see them, I wake up in the morning, I look over here, they're there, I'm reminded of why I'm doing this, basically. And it sets up the mindset, it sets everything up. It's great. Partners are everything. You can't multifamily isn't a single person thing. I mean, you might be able to do it, but it's not worth it. So partners are everything. You want to have good relationships, because those turn into partnerships. And lastly, surround yourself with good people who have a positive influence on you. If you surround yourself with people that aren't doing anything with their lives, that are just sitting there all day, not really doing anything, they're going to have an influence on you no matter what. Like, you may think they won't. I did at a certain point. But they really do influence you. So you want to surround yourself with people basically that are better than you. Bill Allen talked about it. He wants to be the dumbest person in the room. He and you and me should all be around people that add value to you, and you also need to do whatever you can do to add value to them. It's not one-sided. But a lot of times you just need to sit there, you need to listen, you need to observe and find out how these people got to where they are, basically. You want to see the things that led them to their success so you can follow along with that. All right, that's all I have today for this podcast. If you liked it, leave a like down below. Subscribe if you want to get notifications and all that stuff for when new episodes come out. I'm going to try to do it weekly. We'll see how that goes. Next episode, I want to have Pili Urusi on here talking about relationships and partnerships. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching.